I'm joined now by Jared Dubin at JADubin5 on Twitter. He covers the NFL for CBS Sports. You can find his NBA stuff on The Cauldron and Bleacher Report, written for Grantland, RIP. You've been everywhere, Jared. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me, man. And long live Grantland.
You cover a lot of different sports. The NBA has started, but we're going to talk some NFL stuff. And I want to start with the last game of the Sunday slate because this is a historic matchup. Only the fourth time two teams with 6-0 records or better face off. The Packers and the Broncos at Mile High. If Peyton Manning wins, he becomes the all-time leader in wins in league history while doing it almost 2 full seasons worth of starts faster than Brett Favre. And Jared, this season is so bizarre to me because the Broncos come in 6-0 but could easily be 3-3. They're the worst offense in football, but the best defense in football. And Peyton Manning has been the most turnover-prone QB in the league. It seems weird to ask you this, but it also seems like the most pertinent question. Can the Broncos score enough to win this game?
I don't know. I mean, you look at the way Peyton played.
That's weird, right?
Right. You look at the way he played before the bye, and if he keeps playing like that, then almost certainly they can't score enough. It's not like their running game has been even remotely good, let alone any kind of dominant in that they'd be able to run on the Packers. The strangest thing to me is, you look back through Peyton's career, the one time he had even competent defensive play in the playoffs when he was with the Colts, they won the Super Bowl. Like, if you had given Peyton this Broncos defense at any point in his Colts career, they wouldn't have lost for like 3 years.
Right.
The way this Broncos defense is playing is just incredible. But if anyone's going to stop Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay offense, Denver has a really good chance. I thought San Francisco did a decent job of limiting their opportunities to make big plays, and that'll be a key. I think it's going to take Denver creating turnovers deep in Green Bay's territory in order for them to score enough to beat the Packers, because it's not like the Packers have a bad defense either. I think it was the 4th best defense in the league right now.
Yeah, first in points allowed, 4th in defensive DVO, or 7th, in defensive DVOA. The thing about this game, the Packers, if there's one thing you can do offensively against them, it's run the ball, and Denver can't run the ball.
Right, their offensive line has been a fairly – I don't want to say a big problem because there are bigger problems with the teams right now, but it's not been as good as you would have expected. They had a lot of turnover from last year. I think 4 of their 5 starters were new because Ryan Clady's out for the year. They lost both guards, Orlando Franklin in free agency, and then they traded Manny Ramirez, although he played some center last year too. But it's been an issue, and it's not like Green Bay is easy to run against still. Like, even if it's not quite as good as their pass defense, Clay Matthews has been incredible moving inside. Their 3 guys up front are really good too. It's not easy to move the ball in Green Bay either. If this game were in Lambeau, I would say that there was almost no chance that Denver would win. But the fact that it's a road game for Green Bay gives me a little bit more hope for them.
Yeah, DeMarcus Ware limited in practice, Aqib Talib limited in practice. Seems more likely Talib is going to play, but if Ware is out, they already don't have Shane Ray. Right. That could be a big deal for the Broncos, because if they can't pressure Aaron Rodgers, Rodgers is going to get Devontae Adams back. It seems like Ty Montgomery could play in this game. If they can't pressure Rodgers, it's going to be interesting to see if the back end can hold up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they could still probably get pressure. Von Miller is good enough to be like a one-man pressure force by himself.
He's pretty good at the football thing.
He's incredible, and he comes off that left side a lot of the time, which is, at the tackle position probably right now a little bit weaker for Green Bay. Is Bulaga back yet?
Yeah, Bulaga is back. He played before the bye, and then
he did play before the bye, but he's still possibly dealing with a little bit of an injury. And it's not like the guys that are on the actual defensive line, not just those outside linebackers. Those guys can get pressure too. Sylvester Williams has been playing well.
Yeah,
there are other guys up front can shoot through those gaps as well. It and obviously that's harder to do against Green Bay's interior line, which is arguably the best in the league.
Sure.
But if they can keep Rodgers from buying so much time with his legs that he likes to do, when he starts to move around the pocket, if there's somebody there waiting for him, that's a really big key.
Yeah, I think that's the thing for Green Bay. They don't have, without Jordy Nelson and possibly without Ty Montgomery, they don't have the guys receiver-wise that can just beat these corners. But you mentioned it. When Aaron Rodgers breaks the pocket, there's no more dangerous offensive team because the scramble drill the Packers are the best in the league at. And they're able to create those second reaction plays. And that's, I think, more than anything, we saw it against Seattle. That's how you can get a really good secondary to break down.
Definitely. Their best scramble drill guy was probably Jordy Nelson. Just because of the way he works the sideline and his body control and things like that. But Cobb has gotten really good at it too, and James Jones just has such good chemistry with Rodgers from their years playing together. I mean, you've seen what he's been able to do this year. A little bit surprising in terms of the physical talent that he has. But when you have all that institutional memory, that helps, and it's definitely helped him.
Yeah. I think the Sunday night game is going to be fun, but there's another game that might be more entertaining because I think this has a chance to sort of be an ugly game. The 6-0 Bengals and the 4-3 Pittsburgh Steelers. We expect Big Ben to be back for this game, and that's obviously an enormous factor here. But I think the Bengals have the most talented and complete roster in football. Let me ask you the question this way. If the Bengals win this game, is the AFC North a wrap?
I think so. I mean, they would then be up, 3 games on Pittsburgh. Cleveland, you saw there was a couple weeks there where their offense looked pretty good against some not so great defenses, but then they started playing real teams again, and their offense, other than Gary Barnidge, basically disappeared.
Yeah.
And Baltimore is a disaster right now. They're 1-6.
Yeah.
If they take a 3-game lead on Pittsburgh with one of the matchups in hand already, it's very difficult to see Pittsburgh being able to come back to take that division. Whether Pittsburgh could still get a wild card is up in the air. There's basically only 3 contenders, I think, for the AFC wild card spots.
Yeah, the AFC,
the Jets, Dolphins, and Steelers. Everybody else in the AFC, other than the Patriots, Broncos, and Bengals, is terrible, including everybody in the AFC South.
Yeah.
So I think Pittsburgh still has, even if they lose, still has a really good chance to getting one of the 2 wild card spots.
This might change after this week, given the way Tom Brady played on Thursday, which, by the way, was freaking incredible. The Bengals have the best pass offense DVOA in football. The Bengals, Andy Dalton.
They have so many weapons in the passing game. AJ Green is incredible. Tyler Eifert has been, and I think I need to credit Bill Barnwell for this, sort of like mini Gronk.
But not even mini.
He's been amazing. I just meant sort of, Gronk is a giant human being and the most uncoverable tight end in the league, and Eifert's been pretty close.
For sure.
Even Marvin Jones has been really productive. Sanu, not quite as much, but Gio Bernard catching passes out of the backfield has been good. And I think Dalton is still the least pressured quarterback in the league. He might be, second, third, or fourth, something like that right now. But their offensive line, again, for the second straight year, has been really, really good. Andrew Whitworth is incredible. The guys in the middle are really good. It's an offense that is getting contributions from everyone, and that's what you need to be, like you said, the number 1 offense right now.
Yeah, it's one of those things where we talk about quarterback play in the league all the time. But if you're going to build just sort of a prototypical offense that you'd want to have, legit number 1, a really good number 2, a versatile number 3 receiver. They have all those. They've got a bell cow back and a third down back. And they have a mismatch at tight end to go with one of the best offensive lines in football.
Yeah.
It's no matter who you put at quarterback, that's a really good group.
Definitely. And, daytime Dalton is better than nighttime and playoff Dalton. But if he's getting as much help from his guys as he is so far this season, he doesn't have to do quite as much. I think you saw last year's, with my favorite team, the Cowboys, when you don't ask a quarterback to do everything, he can do so much more.
Yeah, that's a great way to
put
look
a really
at it.
good offense around a quarterback who, has a lot of talent, but isn't necessarily a Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers level player. And you give them good protection, and you give them a good running game, and you give them a lot of weapons, and they can make a lot of things happen. Dalton is doing that this year. He's not the level of player throughout his career that Romo has been, and I'll simply stop there because I don't talk about Tony Romo. It's frankly quite useless to do. But, you give guys who have talent help, and they'll succeed. And I think you're seeing a lot of that with the Bengals.
Yeah, the Steelers on the other side are 16th in defensive DVOA. I thought they'd be more like 26th. And that, to me, is the biggest reason that they're able to weather the storm with Big Ben out.
Absolutely. It's not like Michael Vick played well or Landry Jones played well last week. Their defense played really well against the pass. I thought they played particularly well. And then just having Le'Veon Bell come back, too. I mean, that guy is incredible. He's probably the best running back in football right now. You could make an argument for a couple of other guys, but he'd probably be my pick. He's ridiculous.
Yeah, they have the best running back in football and the best receiver in football. So with Big Ben back, I mean, that offense, I thought they'd be good enough this year to make the playoffs just because that offense was going to score against anyone. And the defense has played so much better. I think if we played that week 1 matchup against the Patriots now, the outcome would be much different. Not that the Steelers would win necessarily, but I just think the Steelers defense is playing so much better that would be a great game. And I hope we get a second round Steelers-Patriots playoff matchup.
They'd also be more prepared for what Dion Lewis could do, which I think was a big key in that first game. They were completely unprepared for him, and he did a lot of things well. But now you look at it, and he's, other than Gronk and Edelman, he's the biggest part of their offense. It's different when you expect that going in, and you can do a little bit more to prepare. Obviously, teams are already preparing for him now, and he's still doing great things. And a lot of that is because of the attention you have to devote to Gronk and Edelman, and even their other receivers like LaFell and Amendola. But if you know coming in that you have to focus on a guy, it's a little bit easier to figure out ways to hold him in check.
For sure. By the way, just as we're recording, Roethlisberger updated to probable for Sunday. So that's good news for the Steelers.
Yeah, I think once it came out last week, Tomlin basically said after the game, like, Ben's going to play next week.
Yeah.
Plus, this is probably their biggest game of the season.
Yeah.
Like we said before, if they lose the game, they're probably not going to win the North just because they'll be so far back. But if they win, all of a sudden they're 2 games back with the tiebreaker for now. That's a big difference.
For sure. All right, the last game I want to hit, and I'll let you go, isn't a marquee matchup based on rivalries or standings or anything like that. It involves a 6-0 team against a 3-4 team. So it seems like a mismatch a little bit on paper. But the 6-0 team in this case isn't the trendy Super Bowl pick in the offseason, the Colts. It's the Carolina Panthers. So Andrew Luck has been hurt this year, but his play has been far below what the expectations were. We can get into the actual game in a second, but let me put Cam versus Luck to you this way. To me, Cam has clearly outplayed him this year. But do you think, based on how the media absolutely slobbers Andrew Luck, that Cam vastly outplaying Luck this year could change the perception, at least in the short term, about who's the better QB?
I think if it continues for the whole season, it might. But Luck has also been sort of anointed as, the best quarterback since Peyton Manning, since he was in college. And certainly the physical tools are there. And he's played really well through the early part of his career. I think it's fairly clear that this year he's playing hurt. You can tell by the way he's moving around, by his arm strength, by the fact that he feels like he has to force things that aren't there in order to really make stuff happen. Cam has never been thought of as that type of quarterback. I think he's talked of as a very high impact player, but not necessarily a passer. And even this year, he's outplaying Luck, but his numbers don't look all that much different from what he's done the first few years of his career. much like 2 years ago, it's the defense that's really carrying them to a whole nother level. Josh Norman is incredible. Their 2 defensive tackles, maybe one of the 3 or 4 best interior defensive line combinations in 4-3s in the league. They're getting really good play, obviously, from Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis.
Yeah.
So Cam has been great, and he's doing a lot with very little talent around him on offense. But it's largely been similar performance to what he's done throughout his career, and it's interesting how you see the perception of guys change based on largely how their teammates are playing.
Yeah, it's different when you win games, right? I mean, we see this all the time. QB wins.
Yeah, who would have thought?
Statistic. Yeah, I mean, this is Russell Wilson, but we also, when we use our eyes when we watch the game, right? I mean, Cam Newton
he's been terrific. Yeah,
he might not make that throw to Greg Olsen down the seam against Seattle 2 years.
Greg Olsen from
the U. So
my old college roommate used to get in arguments with Greg Olsen in business law class across the room.
Good for Greg Olsen for going to class, though.
Yeah. Well, under the more recent coaches, guys actually had to go to class as opposed to how it was in the early thousands and the 90s.
I assume that's why the football team isn't quite as good.
Yeah, probably.
You won't talk about it. I'll spare you from that, Jared.
At least we're getting a new coach.
Yeah. The Panthers, though, second in pass defense DVOA, 5th overall. So, as you mentioned, they can push the pocket. Kawann Short has been outstanding. I mean, you said they might have the best or one of the best interior groups in the league. You can make the case Kawann Short has been the best interior defensive lineman in football this year.
Well, I don't think you can make that case because Aaron Donald still exists. But
right.
Like among human interior defensive linemen,
okay, that's fair.
Then yeah.
It doesn't seem like, we talked about Andrew Luck a little bit earlier, his streak of poor play, injured or not, I don't see it ending this week.
No, this is not a good week to pick for him to break that. If he did, that would be a really good sign both for his health and for the Colts the rest of the way. But this does not seem like a game set up for him to succeed.
No. As I said earlier, only 4 teams have played with 6-0 records or better. I think it's going to be 5 next week. 7-0 Packers, 7-0 Panthers in Charlotte, and that's going to be really, really fun. If Cam beats Andrew Luck and Aaron Rodgers back-to-back, that's a y'all can't deny it kind of stretch for Cam.
That would be pretty incredible, yeah. And then also if Denver wins that Packers game, they play the Patriots in a couple weeks. I think 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Both of those teams could be undefeated at the time, which would be pretty incredible.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the Cowboys?
Dez is coming back. I'm happy about that.
Yeah. This is the thing. That whole division sucks. Right. So if they can get back, even just like within 2 games.
They're playing the Seahawks this week, though. I don't really foresee that going very well for them.
No.
Matt Castle against the Seattle defense. It's not great.
It's in Dallas, though.
You would think that Sherman is going to shadow Dez for the most part. They've been using him to shadow number ones more often this year because Kerry Williams is like a freaking disaster.
Not good.
And that's basically Dallas's only weapon with Romo out. Romo makes other guys weapons. Jason Witten is still obviously very good, but a lot of the things that he does is sort of sitting in zones where Romo finds him, and Matt Castle is not the same caliber quarterback.
No. It's not a coincidence that Witten has not
Brandon Weeden. Yeah. Right. Exactly. And Cole Beasley and Terrence Williams isn't hitting deep balls. The offensive line has given him great protection. They've been Pro Football Focus's #1 rated offensive line in pass protection. But these guys just don't have, talking about Weeden and Castle, they just don't have the talent to make things happen. And especially like you saw early in the season, the way the Cowboys were running their offense, they were taking the play clock down to 1 or 2 seconds every time, with Romo making like 6 or 7 checks at the line,
right?
Like Peyton Manning style, and literally calling out like, this guy is blitzing and pointing at him.
Yeah.
Castle and Weeden just aren't that kind of guy. They don't know the scheme as well. They don't know opposing defenses as well. So there's less of being in the optimal play as opposed to just what play was called.
That's got to be such a trip for defenders to have the quarterback like a yard away going, this guy, this guy, this guy. And you're just like, what am I
saying? And then, Travis Frederick is a great center. And, he's the guy that, usually runs the protections for the offensive line. Obviously, he gets a lot of help from the quarterback in doing that. But now it's a little different because those guys aren't standing there gesturing and calling out blitzers and stuff like that. And the fact that they're still protecting really well, I think is a testament to him and to Zach Martin and Ron Lear and Lyle Collins. And obviously, Tyron Smith is, arguably the best left tackle in football. And Doug Free, once he moved back to the right, has been so much better than he was when he was on the left, too.
Yeah, funny how Travis Frederick was sort of a surprise pick, a mocked pick, and he's turned into one of the best, certainly a top 5 center in the league. Maybe the best run blocking center in the league.
That trade into Frederick and Terrence Williams. So it worked out pretty okay.
Are we close to the Cowboys saying we need to take a quarterback?
I don't know. They haven't taken a quarterback in the draft. I can't even tell you the last time.
I can't think of one.
They didn't really draft any guys. They drafted Quincy Carter after Troy Aikman.
Who was the Texas A&M QB? McGee?
Right, Stephen McGee. But he was, a 4th or 5th round pick.
Right.
Even their backups, guys like Dustin Vaughn and Drew Henson was there at a time.
No.
Clint Sterner. They've had so many undrafted guys. They haven't drafted a quarterback in the 1st round since Aikman, which is 1989, 2 years after I was born. I'm 28. It's been a very long time since they've drafted and developed a quarterback. Even Romo was an undrafted guy. They developed him for, I think, 3 years before he got a chance to even get in the game. And then it wasn't until the next year that he started. And even then, Drew Bledsoe started at the beginning of the season.
I remember. Dark times.
I don't know if they'll take a quarterback early just because, Romo played so well last year and it's not feasible to cut him this offseason financially. But if they don't have a really good season next year, at that point his contract becomes such where they would gain cap space by cutting him. I don't think they'd cut him at the time, but maybe they draft a quarterback to spend a year learning behind him or something, because at that point he'd be, I think, 38, which is when guys other than Tom Brady are nearing the end.
I'm going to let you get out of here on this question, but I can't have a Cowboys fan here and not ask him this question. What do you make of the team supporting Greg Hardy the way that they have?
Can I curse on this?
Absolutely.
I think it's a fucking disgrace.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, the guy is an incredible football player, but he seems to be a fairly terrible human and is completely unrepentant about it. I enjoy his play on the field for a team that I root for, but I feel disgusting watching him play with a star on his helmet. The Cowboys have had some questionable personality guys on their team before. The early 90s Super Bowl runs, they had, a lot of guys that were seemingly not great dudes. I was very young when that happened, 5, 6, 7 years old. I know a lot more about the world now, and I'm a lawyer, and I know the way the legal system works in North Carolina, and why Greg Hardy is why you have to use alleged woman beater when talking about him.
Right.
It's disgusting. It really is. It's disappointing, but that's Jerry. He'll stop at nothing to get another Super Bowl ring because he still thinks it was him that created those teams and not Jimmy Johnson. It's great to root for an owner that is so willing to do whatever it takes to win. Not a lot of teams can say that, but it does make me feel bad inside.
All right, I'm sorry if we had to go there, but I had to ask.
It's the most pertinent thing to talk about with a team that looks like a disaster on the field because so many guys are hurt.
Yeah, I wish that wasn't the storyline, and the storyline was, hey, Des Bryant, isn't he the best receiver in football? I wish that was the conversation we were having because he's one of my favorite guys in the league to watch play football, and I was so bummed when he got hurt.
He's already, arguably my favorite player ever. It's him or Michael Irvin, and the only reason Irvin is possibly ahead is because he also went to Miami in addition to being a receiver for the Cowboys.
and also half of the greatest Miami sports related GIF in history when he and Warren Sapp, the "You Mad."
Oh yeah,
it's just excellent. All right, I'm glad we could end a little bit lighter than that. Jared, thanks for joining us. Follow him on Twitter at JADubin5. He writes about the NFL for CBS Sports. Find him there. If you like NBA content, he writes for Cauldron, writes for Bleacher Report. He's tweeting about it. Go follow him. If you want sports content, Jared's got it. Go check it out.
Thanks for having me, man.